Hey, hi, hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy, sometimes Mouse, and I talk about books and book-related things, and welcome to my first video back. Today, we are going to talk about what I read while I was gone. I've been trying to film this video for like a week, but the things happen, life happens. I've had a million doctor's appointments, whatever, that'll be a different video. And I have vlogs that are going to talk about all of these things, but you're not going to see those until like next month, so sorry in advance, but here we are, we're finally filming my first sit-down video since I came back. Everyone's asleep, so I'm hoping that I get it done. Filming things now at 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 5 a.m. is a very strange shift. Also, obviously, we are back to just filming at my desk. I know that before we were filming in that corner, and that was great. The chair is not there anymore. And also, I'm about to put a baby swing there, so, yeah. And also, like, normally I would film catty corner here so you can see my bookshelves. I will probably move the camera back over there for the next future sit-down videos, but my space is still very much a mess because during my maternity leave, this office became just a dumping ground. So it needs to be cleaned and tidied up, also because we're going to make it the area that the baby can play in while I work. So yeah, here we are. Let's talk about what I read in February. How we're going to do this is just like my regular wrap-ups. We're going to talk about what I read in February and what I read in March in the stats-wise, and then I'll talk about my top books for both months together at the end. Top and bottom books both together at the end. I'll just do all the top books, say this is what I read in February, this is what I read in March, and then all the bottom books, same thing. Does that work? Does that work for everybody? Okay, let's get into the stats. In February, I did manage to read 23 books despite going into labor at 6 weeks. I read 3,882 pages and I listened to 151 hours and 43 minutes, which as days is 6 days, 7 hours and 43 minutes. My average pages per day was 123.4 and my average hours per day was 7 hours and 32 minutes. My average rating was a 3.6. I think that rating got tanked because there was a couple books that I DNF'd at like 75%. or even 80%. Like I almost finished them and then I was like, I don't want to read this anymore. So, and you'll hear about those in the worst books. I purchased no books because I was busy having a baby. I checked out 18 library books, which saved me $424.83, and then I reread 6 books. Of those books, 13 of them were audiobooks, 8 of them were ebooks, and 2 of them were physical books. 17 books were adult intended for the intended audiences. 17 of them were adult, 6 of them were young adult, and I didn't read any middle grade or children's books. And for genres, which we will be doing a 6-month update of the book blanket, which will show you how all of the genres are coming along. But for genres, I read 1 sci-fi, 9 fantasy, 1 romance, 2 historical, 1 thriller, 3 horror, no classics, 5 nonfiction, and 1 contemporary. The nonfiction books were all the birthing books that I was reading at the time that I finished. Or marked it. No, I finished all of them. So, here we are. Let's talk about March's stats, because this is really going to be the easy one. In March, I read 6 books. I was in the newborn trenches in March. I read 6 books. That's about the time that I realized I could read at, 1 a.m. when I was awake, pumping and feeding my child. For pages read, it was 1,146. Audio hours listened, it was 41 hours, 15 minutes, which as days is 1 day, 17 hours and 15 minutes. My average page per day was 144.2. Per day, like how many pages I was reading per day of a book that had pages. My average hours per day was 6 hours and 22 minutes and 7 seconds. My average rating was a 4. Because I read really good books. The 6 books I read were really good. I purchased no books. I checked out 6 library books. Every book I read was from the library, and saved $149.86. 2 of the books were rereads, 3 were audiobooks, and 3 were ebooks. For intended audiences, 3 were adult and 3 were young adult. For genres, 1 was sci-fi and the rest were fantasy, so that's 5 fantasy. That was easy. March was easy. I mean, it wasn't easy, but my reading wrap-up was easy. For top books, let's talk about those. First up, we have Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. I read this in February. I thought this was a really fun book. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. It was, I don't know, I've read a lot of T. Kingfisher's horror, and I enjoyed those a lot. So I didn't know what to expect with fantasy romance, which is not my genre whatsoever. But I found myself like giggling, kicking my feet, very similar to how I feel about like the October Day books that have romance in them but are not fantasy romance, but there is romance in them, but it's the slowest of slow burns. I really liked Paladin's Grace. I liked the world too, which is why I continue to read the rest of the series in the next month. I found the paladins and like their whole issue really interesting, and I think that plot, that interest, made the romance tolerable for me as someone who does not enjoy romance. If it's a romance forward book, I generally do not enjoy it. However, if the plot is really fucking good and the plot is not centered around the romance specifically, like there is a whole thing happening around the coupling, then I like it more. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense, but I liked this book for that. I liked our main character. I liked Grace a lot. I loved Grace, actually. And I think I liked Paladin's Grace so much that it made the other ones just increasingly not feel as good as Paladin's Grace. That sounds terrible, but here we are. And then the other is actually the duology, When Among Crows and To Clutch a Razor by Veronica Roth. It's not a duology, it's just the 2 books. There might be more coming. I hope there's more coming, actually. I like this world a lot. These are 2 novellas, and I like Veronica Roth's writing style. I like the found family that we have, that dynamic in this series. But also the world. It's set in our world, but in our world with creatures in it, and I like those kinds of settings. It feels akin to the rules of like Encrypted by Shauna McGuire, because of course I'm going to reference another Shauna series. It feels akin to that, but it feels more fantasy than urban. It's pretty urban, but it still feels much more fantasy. I think my only like complaint is that I wish these books were longer. I wish, like, actually they're the perfect length for the plot, but I want more. Does that make sense? For March, we have another book by T. Kingfisher. It's going to be Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher. This is the sequel to Paladin's Grace. This one is about a little nun lady person that turns into a bear. And that dynamic, and there was just, I love strong female characters, and I thought that this was so good, and I enjoyed it so much. And yeah, I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed it immensely. All of the same reasons as the previous one, quite frankly. Our main female character is much more brusque than Grace was in Paladin's Grace, and I think I liked that. Like, I like kind of rowdy female characters anyway, so I thought that was great. And then after that we have Call Down the Hawk from Maggie Stiefvater. This was a reread for me, so I almost feel like it shouldn't count, but I fucking love these books. I love the Raven Boys series. It is a guilty pleasure read of mine. When I can't sleep, when I feel anxious, I'll listen to the audiobook of the very first book because I love that reader. And so I've been reading these books for a very long time and rereading them repeatedly. I don't even count it because I just passively reread them so often. And so finally finishing the Dreamer trilogy was really satisfying because it's like an adult continuation of the Raven Boys, focusing on Ronan, and I loved this concept. I think Maggie writes just like the craziest books, and not crazy, they're just so readable to me. I love Ronan. He is not a likable character. I love him. I love Hennessy, the main female counterpart to Ronan. I love the concept of the Dreamers and the secret underworld and like all of the things that Ronan's father left behind that like kind of got hinted at in the Raven Boys, but like not fully, and so you kind of get the continuation of that story. But it's not necessary to read the Raven Boys to understand what's happening in the Dreamer trilogy, but you should read both, in my opinion. Okay? In my opinion. For my bottom books, in February, I had 2 books that I DNF'd at like 80% because I just could not continue. I could not force myself to continue. To be fair, caveat, I read both of these in the NICU, so it could just be that I just wasn't in the headspace to read these books. I was busy trying to get my kid to come home for 2 weeks. So it could also be that, so I'm going to give it that caveat. But both of my complaints for both of these books is the same, wildly enough. So first up we have Playing Wolf by Zuzana. Wow, I spelled her last name really wrong, or really badly, and I can't read it, so it's on the screen. It was so, the writing was like stream of consciousness, and I just couldn't get into it. I didn't care about our characters. At first I was like, oh, maybe this is what's happening, maybe that's what's happening, and then when I like realized what was happening, I just didn't care. It was very cliche and predictable, and every character is unlikable, and I need like one character to be likable. Unfortunately, not a single character in this book is likable. Maybe it's a translation issue. It just didn't, it felt emotionless and dumb. And the horror, I really struggle with the type of body horror that feels, it's not even body horror, the type of shock value writing that is sexual. I struggle with that. Like, I even like splatter punk horror for the most part, but when it is just like about sexual horror, I struggle with that a little bit. And it's not even sexual horror, it's like because it's not horror, it's the way that they're described is so brutally graphic, and it's not the scary part, it's just gross, and bodies are gross. And like I said, I was in the NICU, so I think that like part of me, and having just gone through an incredibly traumatic birth, I think part of me also was like, stop talking about body parts like this. Not in a body horror way. That's not what I'm talking about. I love body horror. Not when it happens to me personally, but I love body horror. And then after that we have Carnality by Lena Wolf. Very similar complaints, possibly a translation issue. I did not love that it was so stream of consciousness. I really struggled with that. It was such an interesting concept, and I was really invested, but then as we continued, it was too much sexual horror and not enough any other kind of horror, and I don't like sexual horror. I don't like sexual horror. I think that's my big gripe, and I really need to come to terms with that. I don't fucking like sexual horror. And maybe it's because I have enough trauma, but I don't like it. It feels icky to me. I don't like reading about sex in general, and so to make it horror is like extra icky to me. So I know, I'm 30. Why am I calling sexual things icky? I'm not trying to pass that on to my kid, but I do struggle with that. And I think this was also about like a man who participates in infidelity all the time. Like, he's a cheater chronically, and it's like about this weird TV show that like makes people be better, but like they're crazy and they torture you to make you be better. And the concept was so interesting, but like if it had been about any other kind of character, I don't want to read about your sexual escapades. I don't care. I don't know. That's how I feel about that. My bottom books in March, a caveat, I only read 6 books, and also one of the books here I did not include in my stats because I only got like 20% into it. I haven't included it in my stats anywhere. I didn't count it anywhere. I'm not counting it as read. I'm not counting it because I did not get very far because of how much I fucking hated it. But I'm including it here so that you guys know that I hated this book. First up, we have A Bad Deal for the Whole Galaxy by Alex White. I didn't hate this book. It's a 3-star read. I wanted to include a book that I had actually finished. Or like almost finished. This one I finished. 3-star read. It just was so fucking long. It was so long. And I just don't think that I'm personally built for big sci-fi books. I say that, but I read all the Dragon Riders of Pern books. They're not like long, but I also read all the Mistborn. Those aren't sci-fi. They're not like long, but they're like this big expansive universe. I don't know. Maybe it's just like space specific. Because Dragon Riders of Pern is fantasy space. I wasn't as invested in the second book as I was the first book. Caveat also, this was one of the first books I read as my middle of the night reads. So it could also just be that I was sleep deprived when I was trying to read it, but I just really struggled to follow, really struggled to care, really struggled to feel invested. I want to still try to read the next book in the series, but I just don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. So I feel really conflicted about that. And now for the book that I didn't count anywhere because it's so bad that I didn't want to count it anywhere. That's going to be Boy Mom by Ruth Whitman, which is crazy because my mom said that one of her coworkers is reading it and she was like going to recommend it to me, and I'm like, that's crazy because I fucking hate this book. It is a nonfiction book about raising boys. I have a boy now, Quasi, and I was hoping for insight on how to do that in a holistic way, in ways that I'm not raising somebody that participates in incel culture, like those kinds of things, right? I want to raise a good boy. but I also don't want him to have the pressures of being a good boy. Like, you know? And the first, like, couple of chapters just talks about how fucking hard it is to raise a boy. How nobody wants to raise a boy. How boys are much more vulnerable. They need more emotional care. All of these things. And statistically, like, through research, it's true. Boys are more emotionally vulnerable than girls growing up, and then they don't get the same kind of care as girls. So they're not as emotionally mature as girls because they aren't getting treated the same way or with more care because they need more care. Based on research. But the way this mom talks about raising her 3 boys gave me anxiety. I felt like she was doing, you know that thing you do when, like, you feel like you're fucking up, and so then you do research on a thing and it just confirms that you're fucking up and that you could be doing better and you should be doing better, and then you just, like, spiral into that. I feel like the author did that and then wrote that book as, like, her train of thought. Wrote the train of thought as the book. And that's not good for new moms. I was not in a headspace for this book to be beneficial to me. Which sucks. Again, like all of the books that I'm talking about right now, it could have just been me in the headspace I was in at the time. Newborn trenches, in the NICU, whatever. But it wasn't good. I felt sad for this mom. I felt like she needed more community and more people to tell her that she was doing okay and that it's okay to have 3 boys. Like, I felt like she needed more love herself, and I don't respectfully want to read a book that's trying to tell me how to raise boys from someone who still hasn't figured it out, is freaking herself out, and needs more love and support than what I'm getting. Like, I have a wonderful amount of love and support. I have a wonderful amount of men in my life that will help make sure that my son is being raised with great male examples, but also equally women and non-binary people in my life that will help make sure that my son is raised with great examples to follow. And so I really just struggled to enjoy this in any capacity. I felt sad for the mom. I felt sad for the boys. I felt sad that she felt this way about her children. I went into this with, I want to raise my son in the most loving and wonderful environment, not perfect, wonderful environment that I possibly can, and so I'd like to be as educated as possible on how to do that. That's not what this book is doing, and maybe that's the issue. Maybe I went in with the wrong expectations, but I want boyhood to feel fun and wonderful, and I don't want to feel stressed and awful about it personally. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. But that's the wrap up. That's my complaints. That's the wrap up. That's what I read during my maternity leave. I'm very happy to be back. I'm figuring it out. Figuring out reading, figuring out filming, figuring out when I can do those things and make it all work. I think that's just is what it is. Like, that's motherhood. So thanks everyone for your patience. Thanks everyone for your congratulations and the love. Thanks for ordering things off of the baby registry and all of that. I really appreciated it. It means the world to me. I feel very loved and supported, and that's wonderful. So you guys can expect more videos from me. I know I said I'd be back in May. It is April, and here I am. I'm back early. It's because I have my baby 6 weeks early. So yeah, I'm gonna update my scheduling in my calendar so that I can figure out all of the filming for the rest of the year. But I'll get those things together. We'll figure it out together, right? Hopefully this is the year that, like, I think my content's gonna shift a little bit, and I think it's gonna be a good thing. But yeah, that was it. That's the wrap up. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, how you feel about the nonfiction book that pissed me off, or about sexual horror, if you feel like you can comment on it and it not get blocked. Those things. How do you feel about any of these books? Have you read them? Have you read the T. Kingfisher books, and did you like them? Any of those things. I love to talk about it with you guys, so let me know in the comments down below. Any of you moms that read at 1 a.m., how'd that go for you? Yeah, but that's it. If you didn't enjoy this video, let me know also in the comments down below how I can make it better, unless it's about my opinions. Those are subjective. Objectively, if there's anything I could make better, let me know. I post videos every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every single week, except the first full week of the month, because taking breaks is important, and boy, do I need them. So I will see you guys later on this week. Don't forget to take your meds, drink your water, and do something today to take care of yourselves. Okay, thanks, bye.